The silence came first. Chief Engineer Sala of the Volcar Mining Consortium had worked asteroid facilities for 32 cycles, and she knew the difference between normal operational quiet and the kind of silence that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. The cum chatter from Section 7 cut off mid-sentence. Then Section 5. Then the main processing hub. Her secondary sensory stalks twitched nervously as she pulled up the facility schematic on her terminal. Red indicators bloomed across the display like a spreading infection. Life support systems still functional. Power grid intact. But every communication relay in the western quadrant had gone dark in sequential order, not random system failures, but something methodical, something deliberate. Protocols dictate immediate lockdown, her assistant Kren said, his vocal harmonics wavering with barely suppressed fear. We should seal the command center, and the explosion that rocked the facility cut him off. Sala's hooves scrabbled against the floor plating as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Emergency lights bathed everything in amber. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the scattered lights of Theta 7's mining complex stretching across the asteroid's surface, and now, the cold blue engine trails of at least 24 unknown vessels moving between the structures like predators. "Get me a channel," Sala said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Priority Alpha transmission. Full encryption." Kren's manipulator appendages flew across his console. Channel open, but Chief, multiple contacts breaching the outer airlocks. They're cutting through security doors like they're not even there. Sala activated the distress beacon with 3 of her primary limbs, while her vocal chamber formed the words. That might be her last. This is Theta 7 mining facility, Volcar Consortium, broadcasting on all Galactic Council emergency frequencies. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Multiple breaches. Casualties unknown. Request immediate military assistance. Coordinates attached, please. Anyone who can hear this? The door to the command center buckled. Once, twice, Sala could see the metal glowing orange where something on the other side was applying concentrated heat. Hit the final transmission key and prayed to the architects that anyone was listening. 17 light years away. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with agitated conversation. The distress call had triggered automated alerts across every delegate's personal interface. But what should have been a clear-cut response had devolved into bureaucratic paralysis. Ambassador Threll of the Kanara Accord stood at his delegation pod, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into anxious patterns. The Volcar are a protected member species under Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Compact. We are obligated to respond. No one disputes our obligation, countered Representative Mox, a hulking Granthian whose species had built their reputation on cautious deliberation. The question is tactical capability. The nearest Council defense fleet is Admiral Kresh's Third, expeditionary currently 6 standard days from the Theta 7 coordinates. 6 days? Threll's crystalline structure flared bright with emotion. The transmission shows active hostile boarding. In 6 days, there will be nothing left to save but corpses. Then we improvise, said Counselor Venn, a Sutheri whose silver skin seemed to shimmer with urgency. Broadcast to all commercial vessels in the sector. Offer salvage rights, hazard bonuses. You want to send civilian freighters against military-grade pirates? Mox's rumbling voice dripped with disdain. The Kreeth Corsairs, and yes, the attack profile matches their methodology, would simply add those ships to their collection of prizes. The debate continued in circles, each delegate proposing and shooting down alternatives with practiced efficiency. It was the machinery of galactic governance, thorough, measured, and utterly inadequate for the crisis unfolding in real-time. Then the secondary alert chimed. Incoming transmission, announced the chamber's AI overseer. Source: United Human Defense Fleet. Vessel designation UHDF Relentless. They report receipt of the Velkar distress call, and the AI paused an unusual occurrence that sent ripples of concern through the assembled delegates. Continue, Threll commanded. They report they are responding to the emergency. Current ETA to Theta 7, 14 standard hours. The chamber erupted. Impossible, Mox declared immediately. The humans' frontier colony on Kepler 442b is at least 3 days from Theta 7 at maximum commercial FTL speeds. Military drives, then suggested. Perhaps they've developed faster propulsion than we credited them for. But Threll felt a chill settle into his crystalline matrix. The humans. He'd studied their admission files when they'd first petitioned for associate membership status 40 standard years ago. A young species, barely 3 generations into faster-than-light capability. Their homeworld Earth, they called it, was classified as a Class 9 death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather patterns, an ecosystem where predation was the fundamental organizing principle. Council had granted them probationary status, mostly out of curiosity and partly out of the assumption that any species surviving such a hostile environment deserved acknowledgement. But they'd been kept at arm's length. No military alliances, no deep trade partnerships, just observation and cautious interaction. We should relay our appreciation for their willingness to assist, Threll said carefully, but also transmit tactical data to Admiral Kresh. Make it clear that the humans are to provide reconnaissance, only no engagement, until Council forces arrive. They haven't acknowledged yet, the AI reported. Second transmission incoming. It's just a confirmation code and a timestamp. Nothing else. Threll felt his internal structure resonate with unease. 14 hours. What could the humans possibly hope to accomplish with whatever small patrol group they had in that sector? He pushed the thought aside and turned back to the practical matters of coordinating a proper military response. The humans would arrive, assess the situation, and hopefully have the good sense to wait for reinforcements, if there was anything left of Theta 7 to reinforce. By then, Chief Engineer Sala had stopped counting the hours. Time became meaningless when you were sealed in an emergency shelter with 37 other survivors, listening to the methodical sounds of hostiles, searching the facility section by section. The Kreeth were nothing if not thorough. Through the shelter's limited sensor feeds, hastily jury-rigged by Kren before they'd sealed themselves in, Sala could watch the pirates moving through the complex. They wore heavy armor that made them look like mechanized predators, and they worked with disturbing efficiency, stripping equipment, herding captured Velkar into cargo holds, executing anyone who resisted. They're moving to Section 3, Kren whispered, his harmonics barely audible. That's the last area between them and the shelter. Sala checked her chronometer. 28 hours since the attack began. The Galactic Council would be organizing a response, but she knew the logistics. Days, at minimum. They didn't have days. They had hours, maybe less. A youngling Velkar barely into her first cycle of adult cognition, pressed against Sala's side. Will the Council ships arrive in time? Sala wanted to lie, but her species had evolved past the concept of comforting falsehoods. I don't know, little one. Then every sensor in the shelter screamed a proximity alert. Kren's eyes widened as he stared at his display. Chief, something just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. Multiple contacts. 5 vessels. They're broadcasting a transponder code. Kreeth reinforcements? Sala felt her secondary heart skip. No. Kren's voice trembled. Human. United Human Defense Fleet. The shelter went silent. Everyone knew about the humans, the bizarre. Deathworlders who'd stumbled into galactic society with primitive but functional FTL drives and an unsettling tendency to thrive in environments that would kill most civilized species. But they were fringe players, explorers and traders mostly. What were they doing here? Sala pulled up the external feed, piggybacking on the facility's surviving sensor array. There, at extreme range, 5 vessels moved in formation toward Theta 7. They didn't look like the graceful, curving hulls of standard galactic design. These were angular, brutal, like shards of dark metal cut into ship shapes. "They're hailing the Kreeth flagship," Kren reported, his vocal harmonics rising with something between hope and terror. Sala activated the audio feed. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UHDF Relentless, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the tactical display populate with hostile contacts. 43 Kreeth vessels, ranging from small raiders to 3 heavy corsairs. Her 5 ships relentless, defiant, indomitable, resolute, and valiant were outnumbered 8-1. She'd faced worse odds during the resource wars in the Belt. But that had been against humans, who at least fought with predictable doctrine. These Kreeth were an unknown variable. Intelligence files suggested they were scavengers and opportunists. But the attack on Theta 7 showed coordination and military precision. Tactical. "Give me firing solutions on their flagship," Vasquez ordered, her voice calm. "Communications. Open a channel." Lieutenant Morrison's fingers danced across her console. "Channel open, Captain. They're receiving." Vasquez took a breath and spoke clearly. "Attention, Kreeth forces. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Human Defense Fleet. You are hereby ordered to cease hostilities against Velkar Consortium personnel, release all prisoners, and withdraw from this system immediately. You have 5 minutes to comply." The response came quickly, a guttural, barking laugh that the translation matrix struggled to render into comprehensible speech. "Little Deathworlder ship things." The Kreeth warlord's voice dripped with contempt. "You bring 5 ships against my fleet? Perhaps you are brave. Perhaps you are stupid. It makes no difference. Leave now, and I will allow you to flee with your lives. Stay, and I will add your vessels to my collection." Vasquez glanced at her. Commander Hassan, who shook his head slightly with a grim smile. "Let me clarify something," Vasquez continued, her voice dropping to a tone that every human on the bridge recognized as lethally serious. "We received a distress call from civilians under attack. We don't negotiate. We don't retreat. And we, sure as hell, don't let pirates butcher innocent people while we watch. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to surrender, or we're going to introduce you to what it means when a Deathworlder says no." Silence on the channel for 3 heartbeats. Then the Kreeth warlord Zexther, according to the intelligence brief, laughed again. "You amuse me, human, but amusement has limits. All vessels, destroy those 5 ships, make it painful." The channel cut. Vasquez turned to her crew, and every officer on the bridge saw the cold fire in her eyes, the look that had earned her 3 commendations and a reputation as the Defense Fleet's most aggressive commander. "All ships, battle stations, load the railguns. Spin up the reactors to maximum output." She settled into her command chair and locked her restraints with a decisive click. "Let's show these bastards why Earth doesn't raise its children gently." On the view screen, 43 Kreeth vessels began their attack run, engines blazing as they accelerated toward the 5 dark human ships that hung in space like patient sharks in her shelter deep within Theta 7. Chief Engineer Sala watched her sensors and whispered a prayer to the architects. The battle was about to begin. The first railgun salvo traveled at 30% the speed of light. Captain Vasquez watched the tactical display as 6 tungsten carbide slugs each the size of a shipping container and accelerated through magnetic. Rails that ran half the length of the Relentless crossed the distance to the lead Kreeth raiders in 3 seconds. The pirates' point defense systems, designed for conventional energy weapons and missiles, never had time to acquire the targets. 3 Kreeth ships simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy converted their hulls into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and shrapnel. 2 more tumbled end over end, their reactor sections breached, atmosphere venting in brilliant streamers. The 6th slug missed relativity and probability being what they were, and continued into deep space, where it would travel for thousands of years before friction with interstellar medium finally slowed it. Reload time, 40 seconds, Tactical Officer Chon reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline Vasquez could see in her white-knuckled grip on the console. Enemy formation breaking. They're adapting, spreading out to make targeting harder. Good tactics, Commander Hassan observed. They learn fast. Not fast enough, Vasquez replied. All ships. Pattern Delta 7. Let's show them why we don't fight fair. The 5 human vessels broke formation, accelerating in divergent vectors. That would have torn apart ships built to gentler specifications. The Relentless pulled 4 gravities uncomfortable for the crew, even in their acceleration couches, but manageable with the chemical cocktail of stimulants and pressure support their combat suits provided. For species evolved on lighter worlds, such acceleration would have been fatal. The Kreeth responded with a swarm assault, exactly what Vasquez had anticipated. Plasma lances and fusion missiles erupted from 24 vessels simultaneously, converging on the human ships in a display of firepower that would have obliterated any standard Council military vessel. The Defiant took 3 direct hits. Her shields of technology humans had reverse-engineered from crashed alien probes, and then improved with typical human stubbornness, flared brilliant blue and collapsed. Plasma struck the hull directly and splashed off the armor like water on bedrock. Defiant reports superficial damage to outer hull plating. Communications relayed, switching to secondary shield generators, requesting permission to return fire. Vasquez allowed herself a thin smile. The armor had been her idea, or rather, adapting what Earth's military had learned building vehicles to survive terrestrial combat. Composite layers of ceramic, metallic foam, and reactive materials that could absorb and dissipate energy across wide surface areas. It added mass, yes, but humans had always built their ships with the understanding that armor was just as important as weapons. When you came from a world where everything was trying to kill you, you learned to build things that didn't break easily. All ships weapons-free, Vasquez ordered. Break their formation. Relentless will take the flagship. The human fleet dove into the Kreeth swarm like wolves into sheep. Aboard the Kreeth flagship Bloodclaim, Warlord Zexther stared at his tactical display with growing disbelief. His raiding fleet veteran ships that had plundered a dozen systems was being systematically dismantled by 5 vessels that shouldn't even be able to survive his opening barrage. How are they still functional? He snarled at his sensor operator. Those were direct hits. Their armor is. Warlord, I don't have an analog. It's like they coated their ships in compressed planetary crust. And their weapons, those projectile accelerators, are faster than anything in our databases. Another raider exploded on the display. Then another. The human ships moved through the Kreeth formation with brutal efficiency, their railguns firing with mechanical precision. Each shot was calculated, targeted, lethal. No wasted ammunition, no hesitation. All vessels, concentrate fire on the lead human ship, Zexther commanded. Overwhelm its defenses. I want that captain's skull for my... The Bloodclaim shuddered as something impacted the aft section. Breaching pods. His security chief reported, alarm clear in his clicking vocalizations. 5 contacts attached to our hull. They're cutting through the armor plating. Zexther's blood ran cold. Boarding? Against a flagship surrounded by its fleet? What kind of madness? The security feeds showed the answer. Human Marines, armored in powered exoskeletons that made them look like mechanized demons, poured through the breaches. They moved fast, impossibly fast, for beings in full combat armor. Their weapons, some kind of chemical propellant firearms, tore through Kreeth defenders with shocking effectiveness. Seal sections 14 through 17, Zexther ordered. Vent the atmosphere. Flood those corridors with radiation. I want those humans dead. Corporal James Chun felt the corridor's atmosphere rush past as the Kreeth vented the section. His suit's HUD showed radiation levels spiking to lethal levels, lethal for most organic life. Anyway, his suit's shielding and the anti-radiation medication he'd been dosed with before the mission kept him operational. Radiation's hot, Private Martinez reported over the squad channel. Maybe 50 rads? Comparable to a bad day in the belt. Chun replied, referencing the asteroid mining operations where many of humanity's military recruits trained. Keep moving. Objective is the command deck, 3 levels up. The Kreeth had designed their ships with multiple choke points, defensible positions that would stop conventional boarding actions. But Chun's squad wasn't conventional. They moved. In 0G, with the ease of people who'd spent their lives in space, using magnetic boots when they needed stability and free-floating when they needed speed. A defensive position ahead. Kreeth soldiers behind portable barriers, weapons charged and ready. Chun didn't slow down. His squad carried a mixture of weapons, ballistic rifles for penetration, electromagnetic pulse grenades for systems disruption, and his personal favorite, a breaching shotgun loaded with smart flechettes that could navigate around corners. Frag out, Sergeant Williams said calmly, lobbing an EMP grenade that detonated in a pulse of blue light. The Kreeth's electronic targeting systems died. Their armor's power assist failed. Chun and his squad poured through the gap like water through a broken dam. The firefight lasted 6 seconds. The Kreeth defenders, suddenly fighting in unpowered armor against opponents who trained in 3 gravity environments, never stood a chance. Command deck ahead, Chun reported, checking his tactical overlay. Picking up concentrated heat signatures. Looks like they're setting up a last stand. Copy that, came Captain Vasquez's voice over the command channel. Warlord Zexther is in that room. I want him alive if possible, Corporal. But your safety comes first. If it's him or you, make the right choice. Understood, Captain. Chun signaled his squad to stack up on the command deck entrance. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The shaped charge blew the door inward with a concussive blast that Chun felt even through his armor. His squad flowed into the smoke-filled room with practiced precision, weapons tracking targets, fingers disciplined on triggers. Asterisk. The Kreeth command staff opened fire immediately, a desperate, panicked barrage that pinged off armor and scarred bulkheads. Chun's HUD tagged hostiles and marked friendly positions in real time. He fired 3 rounds center mass, just like training, and watched a Kreeth officer crumple. Then he saw the warlord. Zexther was massive, easily 8 feet tall in his ceremonial armor, with biological enhancements that made him look like a fusion of organic warrior and war machine. He held a plasma blade that hummed with lethal energy, and his eyes, multifaceted and cold, locked onto Chun with predatory intelligence. So the Deathworlder comes to face me personally, Zexther growled. I have killed 100 warriors in personal combat. What makes you think? Chun shot him. 3 rounds to center mass, 2 to the leg joints. Zexther as armor absorbed the first volley, but the joints always the weak point cracked. The warlord stumbled, and Chun closed the distance with a speed that shocked the Kreeth commander. In Earth's gravity, Chun weighed 200 pounds. In the Blood Claim's lower gravity, He moved like a striking snake. His armored fist crashed into Zexther's helmet with force backed by pneumatic pistons and human muscle, trained in high-gravity conditions. The warlord went down hard. "Target secured," Chun reported, pressing his rifle against the back of Zexther's head, while Williams zip-tied the warlord's manipulator appendages. "Command deck is ours." "Outstanding work, Corporal," Vasquez replied. "Hold that position. We're about to wrap this up." Chief Engineer Sala watched the impossible unfold on her shelter's sensor feeds. The Kreeth, Fleet 43 vessels of varying sizes, crewed by pirates who terrorized the sector for generations, was being systematically destroyed by 5 human ships. Not defeated, not routed, destroyed. The human vessels moved with a precision that suggested either advanced AI coordination or crew training that exceeded anything she'd seen in Council military operations. Their weapons fired with mechanical regularity railguns that struck with devastating kinetic force, missiles that maneuvered with impossible agility, energy weapons that cut through Kreeth, shields like they weren't there. But it was the boarding action that truly shocked her. Security feeds from the Kreeth flagship, briefly accessible before the pirates tried to purge their systems, showed human Marines moving through corridors like they were designed for combat. Their armor, their tactics, their sheer physical capability. It was terrifying and magnificent in equal measure. "The flagship is broadcasting a surrender signal," Kren reported, his voice trembling with something between relief and horror. "The remaining Kreeth vessels are. They're fleeing, activating FTL drives." Sala watched as 3 Kreeth ships managed to escape, their drives flaring as they punched through into faster-than-light travel. The rest 37 vessels in total were either destroyed, disabled, or in the process of surrendering to the human fleet. The entire battle had lasted 42 minutes. "They're hailing us," Kren said. "The humans. They're asking for a casualty report and offering medical assistance." Sala straightened her posture, trying to compose herself despite the shock and exhaustion. "Open the channel." The face that appeared on her screen was surprisingly ordinary. Human features, bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes, clear predator evolutionary markers, but not the demonic visage she'd half expected. Captain Vasquez looked tired, professional, and entirely calm, despite having just orchestrated the destruction of a pirate fleet. "Chief Engineer Sala?" Vasquez asked. "We're detecting life signs in your location. Are you and your people secure?" Yes, Captain. 38 survivors in this shelter. There may be others scattered throughout the facility." Sala felt her vocal harmonics wavering with emotion. "You saved us." "I don't know how to." "Ma'am, with respect, we can handle the gratitude later," Vasquez interrupted gently. "Right now, I need to know if any of your people need immediate medical attention. We're sending over trauma teams, but I need to prioritize the critical cases. Professional, efficient. These humans had just fought a battle that would be studied for generations, and their first concern was medical triage. We have wounded, Sala confirmed. 7 critical, 13 serious. Our medical supplies are depleted. Copy that. Stand by for evac teams. And Chief, we've secured the Kreeth flagship. If you have anyone who wants to identify prisoners or provide testimony, we'll make them available." The channel closed, and Sala found herself staring at the blank screen. Around her, the shelter's survivors began to move, to speak, to process what had just happened. Kren approached her slowly. "Chief, I pulled the combat recorder data, the footage of the battle. The Council is going to want to see this. I know." Sala's secondary sensory stalks drooped with exhaustion. "The galaxy is going to want to see this." Because everything had changed. The humans, the young, primitive, barely civilized Deathworlders, had just demonstrated military capability that exceeded most Council member species. They'd responded. to a distress call that the Council was still debating and had resolved the situation with overwhelming force and surprising compassion. The balance of galactic power had shifted in 42 minutes. 3 days later, the Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. The footage from Theta 7 had spread through every communication network in civilized space. News services analyzed it frame by frame. Military strategists wrote dissertations on human tactical doctrine, and the Council delegates argued with unprecedented fervor about what to do about humanity. Ambassador Thrall stood at his pod, his crystalline structure resonating with forceful harmonics. The humans violated 17 protocols by engaging without Council authorization. They deployed weapons systems that exceed agreed-upon technological limitations. They conducted military operations in a sovereign system without. They saved lives. Counselor Ven interrupted, her silver skin flushing with emotion. While we debated jurisdictions and response timelines, they acted. 38 Velkar are alive, because 5 human ships did what 40 Council vessels couldn't have done in time. That's not the point, Representative Mox rumbled. The precedent this sets is dangerous. If species begin conducting independent military operations whenever they perceive a crisis, then perhaps crisis will actually get resolved. Ven shot back. The debate continued. But Thrall noticed something that sent chills through his crystalline matrix. The smaller species, the ones without significant military power, the ones who depended on Council protection, were watching the footage with expressions of hope that if they called for help, someone like the humans might answer. The political implications were staggering. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her ready room aboard the Relentless, reviewing after-action reports and trying to ignore the growing number of communication requests from Council officials, news agencies, and what appeared to be every military attach in the galaxy. Commander Hassan entered without knocking, a privilege earned through 5 years of serving together. Admiralty wants a full briefing, he said, and the Secretary General of the United Earth Government would like a word. Also, we're apparently famous. There's a betting pool on how long before we get court-martialed or promoted. Vasquez smiled tiredly. What are the odds? Even money. She laughed, a genuine sound that helped dispel some of the tension. We did the right thing, Hassan. We heard a distress call, and we responded. That's what Earth's fleet is supposed to do. I know, but the galaxy's not used to species who think like that. Hassan paused. The Velkar survivors sent a message. Chief Engineer Sala specifically requested it be delivered to you personally. He handed her a datapad. Vasquez read the message: formal thanks, expressions of gratitude, and then a line that made her pause. You prove that honor is not limited to old civilizations. The Velkar people will remember that when the young Deathworlders heard our cry, they answered with strength and compassion. We are forever in your debt. Vasquez set down the pad and looked out her viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the 3 Kreeth vessels that escaped were spreading word of what happened to Theta 7. Other pirates, other threats, would hear the story. Let them, she thought. Let them know that Earth doesn't ignore distress calls. Let them know what happens when Deathworlders decide to protect instead of prey. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that humanity had taught itself over millennia of surviving on a hostile world. The strongest predators are the ones who choose mercy, but never forget how to bare their teeth. Helm, she said over the ship-wide comb. Set course for Kepler 442b. Let's go home. The Relentless turned toward distant Earth, and behind her, the galaxy began to understand what it meant when Deathworlders answered an SOS dot with oblivion for those who threatened the innocent, and hope for those who called for help. Asterisk.